what I'm going to talk about right now is the anvil. Now, there's a lot to know about the anvil, and I'll try and go over all of it. I only know so much because I've only used so much, and I'm sure things have other uses than what I know them for, but it's just from what I've physically experienced. Now, the first and foremost thing, in the book, The Art of Blacksmithing by Alex W. Beeler, one of the things he talks about is anvil positioning. Now, basically, I'm going to stand up, you're not going to be able to see my face, but I'm going to go over it with what you need to know. Now, one of the important things is that, at least he says, let me get my hammer. Basically, what you want is your anvil face to come about an inch or so below the face of your hammer when standing in kind of a resting position. Or, also known as, you take your knuckles and you go out like this, and that will also say, you know, about where the height of your anvil needs to be. Now, my anvil has been woefully low for a long time. A friend of mine gave me a stump, and it was what I could get my hands on at the time when I tried to start blacksmithing. And the problem has been, when I'm hammering, it's so low, I'm having to do like a wide stance and a full body motion and stuff like that. And after a while, you can feel it in your back, your neck, and your shoulders. Everything starts getting off. And you can only smith effectively for about 3 hours before having to take a break. Like a serious break, 20, 30 minutes, you know, and just kind of stretch. And when I end up getting home, I end up having to take a very hot shower. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to see about, I got a couple of pallets here, small pallets. I'm going to see about tearing these apart and making a little bit of an extended portion of a stand that I can set this thing on. It's going to be kind of a two-part deal. When I get a full-on my own shop down the road, I'm going to build a more permanent stand, and I'm going to build a more permanent forge and stuff like that. I'm still a little modular right now, you know, able to move things and throw it in the back of my pickup and drive off, whatever. But I'm going to get this stand piece set up, and I'm going to put the anvil on here, and then I'm going to talk about the parts of the anvil. So stick around. So I bought this anvil down in California about 10 years ago for $20. I got a total steal on it. Found it at a secondhand store. It was kind of tucked away in a corner. When I picked it up, it's had this base plate on here that somebody had welded on there. And it's been on there for ever since before I had it, obviously. I've always meant to cut it off there. I just never have. So today, because I'm working on the whole anvil, I'm going to be raising it up and everything, I decided to cut it off. The reason why I decided to cut it off was because you get a much more larger surface area sitting on the stump, so it'll absorb more shock and force and redistribute it back up. Whereas when you just have this plate, only so much can come back. And also, I want to get a solid sink down onto the stump. So I'm taking this off here. That only took about an hour worth of angle grinding and the use of crowbar to eventually pry it off. You want to, of course, be careful. You don't want to dig into your anvil. I mean, think of it like this. If it's 100 years old, which I believe this one is, if it's already 100 years old, why would I want to ruin something? Especially if I could pass it on down the road to someone else who could use it or needs it. So always take care of your stuff as best you can, but let me zoom in on this. That's what the bottom looks like without that plate on there. Now, I've ground the edges a little bit so that way it'll sit flat. And I've tried to remove some of this, but I don't want to do too much grinding in here. Now, this will sit well against that stump. I'm going to take those pallets and I'm going to tear them apart and use the wood to build a little bit of an extra stand for the stump to sit on. So it'll be kind of like a two-part anvil height type deal. I don't know what else you'd call it, but that's the plan. So far, this is what I've ended up from the combination of those little pallets that I've got. It's 5 slats on both sides, top and bottom. And then I've got 7 2x4s in there. And it looks like it's going to work out real good. Let me give you a test here. 1 second. Alright. Now, here's the new height. And that's me standing next to it. About an inch, maybe a little more between. So that'll work. That'll definitely work. Now I just got to get it, the anvil, mounted back onto the log here, and then I'll be ready to rock and roll. Okay, briefly I want to go over the portions of the anvil. You have the heel, which is obviously back here. You have the base, these are your feet. That's the face, this is your table, and this is your horn. Now the horn has also been referred to as the bick or the beak. Different names, same thing. Now each area has kind of a purpose. If you need to work on something that is curved but flat, you can use the heel. If you need to draw something out, the horn is really good for lengthening pieces. Also, of course, making rounds. Table, that little piece right there, I only ever have used that for a handful of projects where I needed kind of like a 90-degree, but with another flat right there. I mean, you could use the corners of your anvil as long as they're nice and clean. But if you've got to have like a little bottom piece right there, it came out handy for a couple of herb choppers I was making. Now, that's your basic portions of your anvil. Now, 90% of the time you're going to be working on this surface right here, just on your face. Because, well, that's where you're going to be hammering. Occasionally you'll have to do a little bit of horn work. And of course back here you've got some other important stuff, which I'll move the camera here in a moment. One of the big things is you want your anvil to be positioned correctly. At the proper heights. Okay? As well as, I like to have my horn on my right side and my Hardy and Pritchard on the left-hand side. Just how it always works out. If I've got to hold something while I'm, like for hot cutting or whatever, bam, right there, good to go. I don't use the horn a whole lot, but when I do, it's for drawing stuff out mostly. Because it kind of acts as like a fuller and helps to draw pieces out. To keep things square, I usually use this. Let me move the camera and I'll show you the Hardy and the Pritchard. Now your Hardy hole is the square one, that guy right there, and the round hole is referred to as either your Pritchell or Pritchard hole. Different places have different names for it, but either way, it's a square hole and a round hole. Sometimes the sizes vary, sometimes they don't. I mean, I don't know really how to put it, because anvils have been around for a very long period of time, and people have come up with different variations and different names for things over the years. Some things remain kind of the same, some don't. But anyway, that's the portions of the anvil. Now there are other videos that'll show you how to do different little pieces and whatnot. But let me show you the rest of my setup here real quick. For the whole anvil, I've got it sitting on that base. I built that stand. There's the log and there's the anvil. And that brings it up to about the correct height for me to work at. So that makes it more comfortable. So let me get the camera set back up and I'll show you my hammers. So currently these are my hammers. This is my main hammer. I just picked it up at a Home Depot. It's a 3-pound sledgehammer. I've got a crap face where I'll hammer on anything. It doesn't matter if it's ruined or what. This face I don't worry about. This face is my rounding face. It helps material move a lot better. This one here I keep polished and I try not to destroy it. You know, things happen, but whatever. I find that the rounding face is very handy for drawing material out and general shaping, but I've been using it a little bit ineffectively because I'm having to learn, you know, as I go. So it's great for certain things, but I've decided to go back to this. This is for the most part when I go to flattening and everything else. This is my 2.5 pound cross peen hammer. It's got a flat face that I keep nice and clean. If I have to, you know, just hit on anything, I'll use my crap face. But you know, it's got a cross peen on the back for fullering, and this face here is really great for straightening, of course, keeping things nice and square. If I've got a lot of material to move, I'll use my 3 pound hammer. Otherwise, now I'm going to my 2.5. This here is my ball peen. I don't use this a whole lot. This is another just absolute bang on things face, because if I need to keep my anvil, you know, like snug up the railroad spikes, I use this. I don't use this face much. However, the face that I do care about and I do take care of is my ball peen side, because this is what I use for leaves mostly. Any other concave shapes I need and stuff like that. This little hammer here I've had since I was about 6, I think, and I've had to fix the handle on it recently because I've had it in storage for forever. But this hammer here I don't use very often. The only time I use it is for forge welding. I found that when I was forge welding, even with my lighter hammer and just barely touching it, it was still hitting too hard, and a lot of the times material was just kind of blowing off. So I got this guy out and I just light taps to get everything set. Then I kind of drop it down and I pick up a bigger hammer once everything is set and I go to town. But proof that a thing you used to use as a small child is still a viable blacksmithing tool. The biggest thing is there's a lot of people who have some really nice stuff and nice gear, and they've worked into it or they've got it or whatever, and that's all fine and good. But you don't have to have the greatest of equipment to produce something great. You can, I mean, people have been doing this stuff for thousands of years. They've figured it out, you know, and that it's not rocket science. You know, good tools help, but skill is first, in my opinion. And I'm still building my skill. So that's my basic setup. Hope you enjoyed.